that's pretty normal. I always have Zoom problems. I want to call the meeting to order. And then I suppose the first thing to do is approve the May 4th, 2023 MPC meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve those?
Chair, I move that we approve the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Councilor Groves. Do I have a second?
Barr seconds.
Okay. All in favor of the motion say aye or raise your hands or something. Okay, looks pretty good. Anybody against it? Okay, approved. Now we'll go to comments from the audience. Is there anybody in the queue out there that, or within the group that, or somebody there that wants to make comments from the public?
Yes, Chair. It looks like Rob Zako is joining us as a panelist now. So Rob, when you're ready, please go ahead.
Hi, Rob, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Mo, members of Metropolitan Policy Committee. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, and I can see you and you can see me. I am, of course, Rob Zako, Executive Director of Better Eugene Springfield Transportation. Thank you for this opportunity to comment to you. Later on your agenda, you'll be getting an update and discussion of an update to the public participation plan. As you probably all know, there's an International Association of Public Participation, and they have this great graphic or chart called the Spectrum of Public Participation. And it goes from left to right: inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. And the key thing to realize about this is that it's not that one of those or the other is better than the other. It's to right size how you engage the public or how the public participates in different kinds of decisions and activities. You normally, as elected representatives or appointed representatives, don't want to empower the public to make decisions for you, but you almost always want to inform them at a bare minimum. And that's what I want to focus on. There's been some discussion we've had about in what cases MPC is actually a decision maker, and in what cases MPC is more ratifying decisions that have been made by other bodies at other times. But at a minimum, MPC, at a minimum, MPO should be a clearinghouse or a source of information for the public. And what best is going to be looking for in your public participation plan is making sure that you're informing the public in a robust way about what projects you document, whether you've decided on those or not, what those projects are for, how much they cost, and what outcomes they're providing. So we understand that this process is ongoing, and there'll be other opportunities for the public to talk about the public participation plan. Sorry, 3 Ps there. But I just want to underscore, bottom line, there's a need to inform the public so the public knows how public monies are being spent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have anybody else in the queue that wishes to speak? Hey, Pat Farr.
Sorry, Chair, I was just waving at Susan Cox.
Oh, okay. Thank you. You can talk if you want, but anybody else, Paul?
Chair, no, I don't see anybody else at this time indicating they wish to speak.
Okay. That's good information from Mr. Zako. Next agenda is amendment to the Metropolitan Policy Committee bylaws. And I guess Paul Thompson will give us the staff report.
Chair, if I can, I'm not sure if we asked if there were any announcements from MPC members. I'm not sure if there are, but
well, you're right. It's on the agenda, and I didn't say it, so I guess I'll go back and ask if there's anybody on MPC would like to say anything. That's when I previously saw Mr. Farr wave his hand, but I guess it wasn't for this. Okay, and then it's okay to move on to the next one, I guess, which is amendment to the Metropolitan Policy Committee bylaws.
Thank you, Chair. So good morning again. This is a follow-up to the discussion we had last month regarding the work of this metropolitan area to implement the climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking, and specifically to work on a work program that's still in draft form to formally adopt a preferred scenario plan and to set performance measures and targets and do other work on implementing those rules. Last month, we told you that one of the things that we need to submit by the end of what is now this month, by the end of June, is a proposed work program and a proposed governance structure. And that we had proposed last month that the governance structure be NPC in one of its guises. NPC, as you all know, has many different roles. The role that we're talking about around the climate-friendly and equitable communities is not an NPO role. It is not a federal role of the NPO or of NPC. And so it would fall under, most closely would fall under NPC's role to address metropolitan transportation issues. But as the bylaws are currently written, that does not include Coburg, and Coburg is a part of the climate-friendly and equitable communities implementation. So last month, we asked if you were okay with, number one, NPC being the governance structure for this, and number two, if you were okay with us proposing what would be a relatively minor modification of NPC bylaws to add the city of Coburg to that metropolitan transportation version of NPC. You said yes to both those questions last month. You asked us to go ahead with that. So really all today's agenda item is the formality that's needed as a result of the NPC bylaws. The bylaws require that there is at least a 30-day notice to the public, to the councils and boards of commissioners, and to your chief administrative officers of all jurisdictions. So this agenda item is simply serving as that formal notice, and it proposes the specific bylaw amendment, both in the cover memo and in the redlined version of the NPC bylaws that I attached in the packet. And again, all I'm asking for today is any further comment or discussion on this, but I needed to do this so that it was the formal notice to meet that requirement in the bylaws. And then we will come back to you at a future meeting, which may be in July, but may not honestly be until September, to ask for approval of this amendment.
Sorry, Paul. I expect that if we all agree we can take a vote if we want, then we will forward our results of today to the agencies and get feedback from them. Is that correct?
Yes, there's no vote or other action required today at all. Again, you gave us the direction to proceed with this last month. Now we're doing the formal notice to the public and the formal notice to your bodies. This gives them, if any of your bodies, your board of commissioners or your city councils wish to consider this or have any concerns about it, this gives them a minimum of 30 days to consider that.
Okay, are we okay with that, everybody? Here's to be. Go forward.
Thank you.
God, you guys are making it easy. Okay, next one is Metropolitan Planning Organization MPO issues. That is Kelly Clark.
And while Kelly is sharing her screen share, I'm going to let her have a minute or two to share her screen and get ready. Or she may wish to share her screen after she talks. I just want to introduce this a little bit by saying that one of the reasons we are bringing to you this overview of the RTP, its implementation and update schedule, is because since you last adopted the new RTP, what we think of as the new RTP in January of last year, or a year ago now, we have had roughly a 50% turnover on the NPC members. And so with a fair number of new NPC members, we wanted to make sure that everybody understood what the regional transportation plan is. We wanted to make sure that everybody understood where we're going with the next update. And with that, Kelly, take it away.
Yeah, thank you for setting the context there, Paul. So as Paul said, the intent of this presentation is to give an overview of our regional transportation plan, a little bit on its implementation, and to prepare us all for an upcoming update. So through this agenda item, I wanted to give some context on why we have a regional transportation plan, or an RTP is what I'll refer to it as. Give an overview chapter by chapter. We have 7 chapters in it. And then a little bit on, again, our upcoming update. And please do feel free to ask any questions for clarification throughout the presentation. Happy to. I want to make sure it's I'm covering all my bases here. So why do we have a regional transportation plan? It's both a federal requirement and there's a lot of regional benefit. And so the federal requirements are that we implement our national planning goals and federal planning factors at the regional level. We need it to receive federal funding. It sets our performance-based planning and programming framework. It must be updated every 4 years, and we need it to meet air quality conformity determination requirements. Lots of other things with that, but those are kind of some high level reasons that we need to meet federal requirements. It also helps us establish some regional benefit. It's establishing our cooperative, continuous comprehensive framework for making transportation investment decisions. Presents our regional goals for safe, accessible, and efficient multimodal transportation system for now and in the future. Supports our local policy direction, priorities, and projects, and we need it for federal dollars for our projects. Planning and programming work. So the first chapter is called Setting the Stage, and it's important because it provides a base for the remainder of the plan because it explains what Central Aid and PO is and our role within the region. It provides context of how other plans inform the RTP and its project list, and it summarizes our public engagement for the RTP update. And that also provides a base inventory of our regional transportation networks. We updated the congestion management process and intelligent transportation system plan at the same time as this RTP update, which is great timing because those are now very current documents, and all the projects, programs, and strategies from each of those plans and processes are now embedded into the RTP project list. Additionally, the RTP must be consistent with our local plans, like all of your transportation system plans, ODOT's corridor plans, other types of plans that are out there, and LTD's transit planning plans as well. So we work diligently to support those transportation projects, programs, and strategies in the RTP project list. This first chapter also discusses how we engage the public throughout the RTP process update. It was a big update. It set new goals for us, new objectives and performance measures. Public engagement was important because it helped make sure that we were heading in the right direction. And this update process took place between May 2020 and January 22. During the height of the COVID pandemic, so all of our outreach was done online, remotely, and through mailers. We conducted an online open house, had bilingual mailers, bilingual paper survey that was distributed by Downtown Languages, travel behavior survey that was statistically significant to our region, and we had outreach with multiple advisory committees and community groups. A little bit of detail on the open house is that it included an issues map and asked people to respond to a series of questions about their thoughts and ideas regarding transportation needs and funding priorities. We tried to increase participation by those who did not have internet or may not have known about the open house through a bilingual mailer that was both in Spanish and English. And it was sent to our traditionally underrepresented or excluded community members with the same questions that were on the online open house. We made several advertisements for the open house through the project website, social media posts, news release to local media, bilingual mailers and flyers, and then several email blasts. And overall, we had 190 people participate. And the map you see on the screen here shows that issues map and all of the different places that people commented for issues. We had 79 unique users submit a total of 268 comments from that open house. And so that was informative for our planning purposes. And we were also able to share all this information with our local partners to be able to kind of integrate those comments into the planning efforts as well locally. Finally, chapter 1 just provides multimodal inventories for each of our all of the pieces that make up our regional transportation network, from our motor vehicle facilities to active transportation facilities, biking facilities, trails, transit networks, passenger intermodal facilities and lane transit districts, service networks, the airport, park and rides, freight and network, intermodal facilities, all of the different pieces. And so those are important for us to document and have a baseline understanding of how we're doing with each of those. The map here just shows our bicycling inventory. Chapter 2 is the RTP's goals, objectives, and performance measures. And federal legislation requires that the RTP, any RTP for all MPOs across the nation since 2018, have a performance-based planning and programming framework. And so this is our first RTP to establish that framework, and it follows the federal guidelines kind of shown on this screen here. It sets the strategic direction with goals, objectives, and performance measures, analyzes trends and targets, sets strategies, and develops investment priorities that are consistent with our local and state plans. And since the RTP must be updated every 4 years, there's a natural loop for reviewing, evaluating, and reporting, and then amending and adjusting as needed. It's a living document. It's a lot on the screen here, but I wanted to share it all because the left of it has our goals and the goals. Goals around transportation choices, safety, security, and resiliency, healthy people and environment, equity, economic vitality, reliability and efficiency, and then system asset preservation. Each of those goals is tied to the federal planning factor it's implementing, and each of the goals is based on community feedback. MPC at the time felt strongly that each of those goals was of equal importance and not to be prioritized or weighted. On the right of this screen shows how the RTP lists objectives for each goal. There's a lot for each, and I didn't want to show this all on the screen, but it's each in our RTP. It also shows on that little snapshot how what performance measures are established to measure those goals and how they're tied to our federal planning factors. And then for performance measures, we have kind of 2 levels. One is federal performance measures and targets, and the other is our regional performance measures and targets. So the federal ones are federally required. They're baked into the federal code. We must follow those as they're written. We coordinate with ODOT to evaluate and analyze and report on them. And MPC has moved to support ODOT's targets and work with the state on achieving them. And most recently, the set of targets that we had to approve were done during the MPC's October 22 meeting. For the most part, those measures are on the state system and measure the state system performance. MPC felt that we needed local measures that were tied more locally and that reflected our region's priorities more. And so we established a series of regional performance measures and targets shown here. These are the categories, and each are tied to goal areas. And that's shown a little bit more on this screen. So we can see our goals. We can see each performance measure on the left of this graphic, and on the right, the icon of its associated goal. So again, making sure that we're tying and flowing this all through the plan. Chapter 3 provides a regional assessment, including factors that are the key characteristics of our region, our population demographics, employment centers, key destinations, our commute patterns, miles traveled, mode share, safety, including crashes for pedestrians and bicyclists, and fatal and serious injury crashes, information like that we need to understand in order to plan. Each factor is evaluated and reported with the most current available data, including census data, Portland State University population data, and Department of Employment data. We use a lot of graphics to convey this information, and I'm showing a few here. Our region is, in general, becoming it's growing, becoming more diverse. We're aging a little slightly, slightly decreasing in poverty, and have a slight increase in people with disabilities, amongst a lot of other things that are reported in this chapter. Chapter 4 is our financial framework. It identifies all of the potential sources of funding through the 2045, which is this plan's horizon year, and from federal, state, and local sources. It indicates kind of assumed or based on our best understanding of the future, assumptions for each allocation in the future through the planning horizon, kind of based on the trends we've seen in the past and what we know about the future. And so overall, we anticipate our main sources of funding holding steady. The RTP must be financially constrained, which means that the RTP revenue forecast is a reasonable estimate based on historic revenue and foreseeable funding. It's required to be constrained by this revenue, reasonably expected to be made available, which supports all of our kind of investments and programs. Overall, CLNPO, or Central Line NPO, has forecasted 1.65 billion in revenue over the course of the planned horizon year of 2045. And the forecasted 1.65 billion represents our constrained bottom line, constrained project list bottom line. There's several, like any plan, there's some shortfall in funding. We've identified some strategies to address that shortfall if we wanted to go that route. Probably none of them are ideal, but increased federal and state taxes and fees, accept lower levels of service, additional fees through stormwater or transportation, regional transportation taxes, bridge tolls, increased SDCs or system development charges, transfer of jurisdiction. Those are all kind of strategies that we can employ to help revenue shares. And then chapter 5 is our regional list of projects, programs, plans, and strategies. There's a multitude of types of actions that we need to take to round out our multimodal transportation system and then to meet our regional goals. We spend a lot of our time in this foundational realm, which is our programs, plans, and strategies, like maintaining our system, maintaining and preservation of our existing networks, bridge repair and maintenance, a lot of work on safety, including the Safe Lane Coalition and safe routes to schools. We have a data portal that we maintain to provide up-to-date data as needed. Active transportation efforts through both capital and programming work, transportation options and transportation demand management work, transportation systems management and operations, and intelligent transportation systems. And those last two kind of rely on technological improvements and technological work to keep the system flowing and to aid in capacity instead of building out. So a lot of our implementation actions come from this list. And then we have capital projects listed, and this is the big bulk of the funding piece of the project, just because building things costs a lot of money. Since the RTP must be consistent with our state and local and adopted plans, the capital project list is basically a reflection of the projects listed in all of our local plans, transportation system plans, ODOT plans, lane transit district plans, and then the NPO federal grant application process that Dan kind of guides us through. Dan Callister is one of the ways for us at Central Line NPO to carry out our regional goals and to prioritize investments from this and from the foundational list by establishing the criteria that would reflect the goals. It helps us select projects. There's a lot of different categories in our project list right now. There's arterial capacity improvements, transit projects, new collector roads, road upgrades to urban standards, like a road that doesn't have any sidewalks. So that's a project to add sidewalks, curb gutter. And then studies that need to be done in order to understand what we need to do in the future. And then a lot of bicycle, pedestrian infrastructure projects and regional trails and sidewalks. The fiscally constrained list is again constrained by revenues known from unknown sources and how they must be spent. And then chapter 6 is our, kind of the flow through from establishing goals, objectives, and performance measures and measuring the plan. So the local performance measures are intended as a baseline to understand where we are as a region and where we want to be. Again, this is our first RTP with a performance-based planning and programming framework, and it established this framework. Our next evolution as we go into our next RTP update are to look at scenarios that what shifts this meets intent kind of line, and what does not meet intent, and where are the trade-offs to guide us in a direction of meeting the intent. And chapter 7 is our final chapter, and it recognizes that our region's evolving, and we'll continue to have a lot of evolving impacts that we need to be prepared for. COVID-19 taught us a lot, that nothing's certain. We have changing demographics. We have still outfall from the pandemic, I think. There's climate change, equity concerns that we make sure we're being cognizant of, housing and employment needs, and then technological advances. There's a lot of ongoing work we have. This is just a small snapshot, but we'll continue our work with the Safe Light and Transportation Coalition and Safe Routes to Schools, a lot of transportation options programming and transit planning. We have the Oregon Household Activity Survey that's in pilot mode right now. It's a big data gather for us regionally and the state. There's some funding called Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation, PROTECT funds that came out of the latest federal legislation that we're queuing up for a grant application that might help our region or our county do some vulnerability assessments and planning for resiliency. And then there's implementation of the climate-friendly equitable communities legislation that's not specific to the MPO, but it's very impactful on our local jurisdictions. And so definitely part of the ongoing work scenario that we're looking at. And then a little snapshot on what to expect as we're looking at our next RTP update. The next one, since they're due on 4-year cycles, the next one is due by January 26th. We'll start that work in earnest in 2024, although we're already kind of queuing up for it a little bit with some data work. But it starts with data preparation and analysis, and then we'll engage with the community to set goals, objectives, and evaluate our performance measures. We'll go through our project prioritization process, and then the final step is drafting and adoption of the next RTP, again by January 2026. That's all I have for the presentation. I can bring this down, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You want to bring up at least for me, the first sheets where all the goals are.
I'm sorry, did you want me to reverse the slide so it's at the beginning?
Yeah, up to the first slide.
Okay.
For me anyway. Yeah.
Forgive me as I scroll through here.
Oh, no, that's fine.
There we go. The chapters.
So those are the chapters that we just discussed.
Yep.
And that is our future. We have discussion, or we're going to have discussion from the group on that. No discussion?
So, well,
My hand's up, Chair.
Okay,
Randy
I
Groves.
can't, you're here, and I can't see when you're here. Go ahead. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I know it's difficult. First of all, thank you, Kelly, for the presentation. Really appreciated it. You mentioned the data portal. And is that something the MPC members have access to? I'm particularly interested in safety.
Absolutely. I can put a link to it in the chat here. It's something that Ellen Courier, who has presented several times here, maintains and makes sure it's up to date with data related to demographics and population and crashes and vehicle miles traveled. A lot of different pieces are in there. So I'll add a link in the chat.
Thank you. I think it would be helpful for MPC members to understand what data is being collected and what is available as we delve through some of these decisions. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next hand up is Nancy Bell. And then Sean.
yes. Thank you, Chairman Moe. I have Kelly, I have a question, and of course, I'm in Coburg, so that's my locus, and I have to be honest about that. When I look at Goal 2, what is the expected impact on Coburg? I mean, we have Willamette Street, our main street, much like many main streets, is a heavy freight route. We also have the IAMP project, so the west to east bridge and the east section of Van Dyne. So, you know, we've expanded our urban growth boundary to include 120 acres of light industrial. It's already come back that we will have limited trips per day when that is in pact or fully developed. So I don't know where we are on replacing that bridge or where this is in the plan. So I'll be quiet now and take your answer offline. Thank you.
Sure.
Good question. Mayor Van Gordon. You're
Well,
next.
I can assure you that every time I see a state official, I make sure to point out Coburg Bridge and say, when you drive back up there, take a look at it and help the city out. I guess the two questions that I had, or maybe it's two comments. One of them is, I think, you know, we're about ready to restart this whole thing again, right? Which is a pretty tight planning cycle. And as it sort of gets more complicated and there's more requirements that are, you know, put in this plan, I just want to sort of flag that more detail and more complexity is not necessarily better, right? Like, so, you know, I'm open to more discussions as we deal with more complicated problems. Just, I guess, make sure that if we add more content, you know, it is something that's definitely going to move the dial for us. And I think the second comment, and I'm going to throw my friends in ODOT under the bus here. And I think the data question, like when I think about what we go on Main Street, when I think about RTP, when I think about everything else out here, I think the data question is really resonates as something that we lack from a transportation system perspective. And it really speaks to me about the safety data, which tends to expire and tend to be inconsistent and tends to have no source of truth. My opinion is, like, there's a whole group of this that ODOT really just needs to take responsibility for and provide the data, because we get into crazy safety conversations all the time. And what loses it is not having consistent, refreshed, up-to-date data that nobody can understand, that anybody can understand. And I know that that's a little bit of a tangent from what you were presenting, Kelly, but as we sort of talk about these data platforms, I really do think ODOT's got to get aggressive with it and really take the onus off of the local cogs for it, and really be the person that provides, you know, warehouses a bunch of this data, because that will improve consistency.
Thank you.
Paul Thompson is next hand.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. We can certainly think about presenting maybe in the fall sometime a formal agenda item on the data portal. I know that there's more work that we're planning to do on that. We can give you a run through the data portal. We could talk about some of the limitations we face around the safety data. As Mayor Van Gordon just pointed out, we have had some inconsistency and delays in obtaining that data. It does take, understandably, it takes some time for the state to collect and process and then pass the data along to us. But we can talk about a lot of data issues in a future agenda item. I think that would be worth doing. You know, I also think that in terms of Mayor Van Gordon's comments about the complexity of the RTP, two comments real quick. First of all, in 2 weeks from now, the MPO staff will be having our quadrennial certification review with US DOT and ODOT. Once every 4 years, the federal officials from FHWA, FTA, and the ODOT officials review the performance of the MPO. And in 2 weeks, we'll have 3 days of meetings with them and see what sort of things they want us to address, see what sort of things they think we need to improve on. That's one thing that we can use to inform maybe some focus on the work of the next RTP. But the other thing we want to do is when we really kick off discussing the new RTP, I think one of the first things we want to do is have a discussion back with you folks, the MPC members, on what do you want to focus on? What is there that you think needs more work or improvement in any way? You know, the last RTP, the one that you're looking at now on the screen, was a comprehensive update. We created an entirely new RTP. Prior to this one, we had been really refreshing the existing RTP through several 4-year cycles. And I don't personally think we need to create an entirely new RTP again 2 years from now. I think we need to refresh this new one we have, but focus on some areas that need, that you want to see have more focus and more attention paid to. So we'll be sure we have that discussion with you also. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, the next hand up is Waddell Francis.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Kelly, for the presentation. They're very good. I really appreciate that. Just 2 comments, and I think both Paul and others kind of commented on there specifically about the safety data. Anything on my end I could do to help to get the data that this body needs or is looking for, or what you would like to see as far as data is concerned, I'd be happy to do some work on my end to help get that data over to what's relevant for this group. Second comment that I have, and maybe we can talk about this offline, speaking more so for that Coburg Bridge there, I think was the earlier question, where we at? And I know that just maybe 4 months ago, we did quite a bit of work on trying to get a grant to try to replace that structure, but through various turns and what's not, things have not panned out the way we would like it to happen. So, but that's a discussion I can probably have offline with Ms. Bell, I believe it was, and feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you.
I know you have good connections on getting that data. I think Mr. Van Gorton has his hand up now.
Yeah, just one quick comment. It might be worth having just a space for a longer conversation about it. Vidal, I don't think it is like a data set we're looking for. I think it's more broad, consistent access to safety data in a way that is duplicatable across the community, because it is a very confusing experience right now. And like, if we just needed one data set, I think that's kind of a different thing. It's more like getting to the place where, hey, as we have these conversations with the community, can somebody actually access it if they have questions on their own, see it, and come up with the same answer on more than one time?
Understood. Thank you.
Let's see. Randy Groves, Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. Piggybacking on what Mayor Van Gordon said, that would be really helpful. I feel like I need to get in there and see what we have first of all, but that consistent and accurate information is very important when we try to establish what the trends are telling us. And any one set of data by itself really is incomplete. You need to have what has happened before historically to kind of see, are we improving or are we heading in the wrong direction? And safety, I think, is coming front and center for a number of us here, just because that's such an important piece of protecting our public. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have other hands up? Talk about this. It's good discussion. I need to speak up better. I'm sorry, you guys. We have direction to staff, Have we provided that?
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to chat about the RTP and thank you for your feedback here.
I agree, Chair. I think we have some good ideas of focusing some of the early discussions.
Good. Hearing that, seeing that, I guess we're okay to move on. Anybody? All right. Public partition plan update, I believe, is the next one. And Dan Callister, be part of that?
Sure, that's right.
Okay, there you are.
So this item, this is to present an overview of the Public Participation Plan, or PPP, and to solicit direction from MPC on updating that plan. So similar to the last agenda item, only where the current RTP was adopted a year and a half ago, our current Public Participation Plan was adopted 8 years ago. So it's badly in need of some update. There is a link to that current document in the cover memo for this agenda item. I'd invite you to click on that and be perusing it as I'm kind of giving a high-level overview. So what is a public participation plan? Federal regulation stipulates that MPOs shall develop and use a documented participation plan that defines a process for providing interested parties with reasonable opportunities to be involved in the metropolitan transportation planning process. So the PPP satisfies that requirement and is used by the MPO as a tool to guide our public engagement efforts. So the current plan is essentially divided into 3 sections. There's the policy element, a section titled Providing Input, and then there's an evaluation piece. And the policy section serves as really a foundation for the plan. It's remained largely unchanged through previous updates. The section identifies the overall goal, which is citizen involvement in regional transportation issues. And there are 3 objectives. Those are, I'm just going to read them here briefly. Objective 1, provide citizens with information to increase their awareness of transportation issues, encourage their involvement in resolving the issues, and assist them in making informed transportation choices. Objective 2 is ensure that the decisions made in the MPO transportation planning programs are consultative and are clearly explained and documented in a manner accessible to all interested public. And finally, objective 3, ensure that the public involvement process provides full and open access to MPO decision-making. Those are the 3 objectives. Each of those is accompanied in the plan by a number of more specific policies. You can, in the plan, go to page 7. That's where that section starts. You can review those specific policies. The next section is titled Providing Input. This is where the outreach tools are identified and where the principal opportunities for public participation are identified in our MPO processes. It includes strategies for outreach and prescribes how the MPO will involve the public for each of its key products. And so key products, I mean our RTP, our Long Range Transportation Plan, as well as our Unified Planning Work Program, our UPWP, and our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, and others. And of course, the Public Participation Plan as well. That information is summarized as a table in attachment 1 in your packet. You can see in that table, if you bring it up, it shows that for the Public Participation Plan, or PPP, it's adopted by MPC and amended as needed. Then it shows which of the basic public outreach and participation tools are to be utilized for a PPP adoption. So for PPP, all 5 of the tools are to be used. Those 5 identified in this table, in this plan, are having a public comment period, a public hearing at MPC, notice to interested parties, a web notice, and Speakers Bureau. The Speakers Bureau is essentially it's staff or other individuals that are well informed on the topic that are available to make presentations to committees, interest groups, etc. You can see that the tools are a little different for each of the MPO's products. The products that are listed on the left in that table. Each of those tools are explained in more detail in the plan. Many of those tools are required of MPOs for certain work products, but many of them are not. I think this reflects a little bit on how Central Lane MPO values public participation. For many of our products or processes, we prescribe more than what's required. For example, when we program new MPO discretionary funds, the federal requirement for that is, it can be as simple as a 2-week public comment period. In Central Lane MPO, for years, we've required 30 days for public comment and a public hearing at MPC whenever we're programming those new discretionary federal funds. That is not actually reflected accurately in this table from 2015, but it is documented as procedure in our transportation improvement program. So that's also an example of an update that is needed. The third section is the evaluation section. It identifies measures like number of comments received, number of testifiers at public hearings, etc., to be used to assess the effectiveness of the outreach and participation tools towards meeting the objectives of the plan. So I mentioned, I know that's high level stuff and it's a long plan. You have it there to review at your leisure. But I mentioned we're hoping for some direction from MPC about how staff might focus our efforts as we're updating this plan. We recognize that a lot has changed in the world since 2015. A big part of those changes are how people communicate and share information.
Mm-hmm.
So just think of changes just since COVID, where here we're all meeting virtually today, and members of the public can join us today from their living room and share their comments. All the meeting materials and notifications were provided completely digitally. So the public participation environment has evolved. While the 2015 plan at its core is solid with its scope and objectives, it is in need of some update. And this is a good opportunity to revisit the tools that are in our toolbox, to reassess policies, procedures, just to ensure that Central Lane MPO is using the outreach tools and strategies for public involvement that are most appropriate for the Eugene-Springfield metro area in 2023. So with that, I welcome questions, comments, direction from the committee.
I do have the first hand up, Mayor Van Gordon.
Get a TikTok? Like, I don't know if there, I'm kidding. So I guess when I read it, I do appreciate the fact that there's a looking for a revision from the 2015 plan. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably an important piece. When I've read the public outreach, information from the MPO, I guess the one critique that I would have, and maybe we can support it in the participation plan, is this stuff's super technical, right? And so, and when I read, all the different plans and where the speaker bureaus are, right? Like, I always consume it is that it's sort of explaining this trying to explain it at the most technical way possible, instead of sort of bringing people up a little bit. And I don't know if, like, I'm less concerned about getting all the technical details about what plan does what and what funding does what, and more about getting grounded upon the big concepts. If I was the average citizen in the public, what we want them to know.
Okay, we have Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, the comment I was going to make can partly now respond to what the mayor just said. I think one of the goals that we want to accomplish with the new public participation plan is to simplify it, make it more accessible, and make it more understandable around how the public can get engaged in these decisions, not just with the MPO, but at the point where decisions are actually being made. The comment was made earlier today that by Mr. Zako about how MPC is the MPO policy board, sometimes is ratifying decisions that are made either locally or by ODOT. And I think one of the things, and Dan, please correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but I think one of the things we want to accomplish in this update is an overview of where those decisions are happening and where the public participation opportunities are before something comes to the MPO, so that people can look at this and say it's a regional public participation plan guide in some sense. And if you really want to get involved in what is ultimately going to be an MPO decision on, let's say, an ODOT project, then you should be paying attention to these ODOT processes or these city regime processes or something else like that.
Okay. Anybody else? We went through a period of people not coming to public meetings because they didn't want to go to public meetings and hear this stuff. Now, communication is changing exponentially, and most people can get involved now, and we're seeing that. That's a good thing. Anybody else? Oh, Vidal, Francis.
Yeah, just a really brief comment too. As far as reaching out to folks who are not so readily accessible through the web, because when I look at your plan here, web notices, MPC hearing, both of those are pretty much online, if you will. And if someone doesn't have web access, it's going to be challenging. So the question I have is there any discussion around trying to reach people who are not normally reached through these typical venues that we use?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we definitely don't want to marginalize or exclude anybody. That's the opposite of our goal. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll make sure that's incorporated.
Commissioner Fire,
Thank you, Chair Mo. And jumping on to what Mr. Vidal Francis said, everybody cares about transportation, but most people don't do anything about participating in it, and because it is difficult. And I think we not just with MPC, but a lot of our bureaus and agencies make things very technical and very difficult for people to participate. I think earlier when we were talking about the bridge in Coburg, people know what is happening in their neighborhood. And, Paul, it's a real challenge for you to get people to participate because you have the means that are available to you. And how do we as the MPC, how can we help with that participation? I've seen Sean Van Gordon sit in Albertsons, not specifically, but, inviting people to come over and talk to him. I think getting people to participate and let the officials know what it is that they want. Because everybody wants transportation improvements, they just don't know how to make it happen. And it is very, very technical indeed, as Mr. Francis said. And the website is difficult to access if you don't know exactly where to go. So I don't really have an answer for it. I'm on MWMC, and MWMC goes right into the schools and gets parents to participate through schools. So it really works very well for them because they have what's called Clean Water University. So how do we get people to let us know what it is that they want? Once again, no answers, but it really is a challenge for you, particularly Paul, to make sure that all the information that we're trying to get out, people do hear it, and we fulfill, Mr. Callister, the obligations that we have about as far as an outreach plan is concerned. So keep the conversation going, and if anybody has any great ideas, I'm really anxious to hear.
Well, a lot of things I've been involved with, I see a lot of push to try and get to those people. So it's in process. It's going to be slow, but their comments are just as important as anybody else.
Maybe we can use some of Randy's old fire trucks and just drive around the neighborhood with speakers saying, blaring out the website for people to participate.
We have a beautiful orange fire truck in Springfield.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to speak about this? Now, have we started to provide you with some direction?
Yeah, that's enough for us to continue our work. And I appreciate that, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more from us.
Thank you. Okay. Next is a DOT update. I don't see a name here, but
yeah, that would be me, Chair. Okay. And I'm going to be brief today. Just one item. I think there was quite a bit of discussion on the 24-27 STIP that we've just kind of walk through to get approved. But there's been some discussion now on the 2730 STIP, which is the next cycle, if you will. And I think in line with this conversation that we're having right now about PPP, I want to say that public involvement piece is starting up for the 2027-2030 STIP process. And starting this month, going into next month as well, there's going to be some emails, updates going out. Website, our ODOT website is going to start to come up to put some stuff concerning that. But also we've been given some directions to reach out to the various advisory groups, which include the MPO here as well, to kind of have that discussion around what the 2730 STIP could look like. I do have a small presentation that kind of recently got maybe at the next meeting or meeting thereafter. It doesn't matter to me. I can kind of have that a little short 10-minute to briefly talk to this body about that 2730 STIP. But I think the biggest thing in that presentation really is around the policy direction for funding priorities for the 2730 STIP. And again, earlier we discussed about traffic or safety data being important as well. And I understand at least one of the priorities is trying to help diminish or prevent fatalities and serious injury crashes throughout the state, if you will. More to come on that, but I would like to, have some discussion with this body concerning that 2730 STIP to start that public outreach phase for us, starting early. And hopefully we can go through the various venues to be able to get as much input as we can, both online, face-to-face, community outreaches, in-person meetings, and so forth. And I'm looking forward to start that process, at least with this group and the various other groups that I will be working with.
Your timing is good because our next agenda item is agenda build. Talk about building an agenda, and you should be a part of that. So
awesome. Okay.
I assume staff will pick that up. And other agenda items, agenda build, it says, are the things we should be talking about that we should be adding. Okay. Well, good job, everybody. Our next meeting is July the 6th. No, that's Metropolitan Cable Commission meeting. Okay, sorry about that.
Here, if I may.
Yes.
Two things I wanted to note. One you just referenced is that we are currently scheduled to hold a Metropolitan Cable Commission meeting on July 6th. My understanding from the Cable Commission staff is that they will need a meeting. That may be the extent of the MPC meeting in July. And then we may be having a recess in August, understanding that a lot of your local bodies are also in recess. And at this time, that's tentatively the plan, but we'll keep you updated. Second thing I wanted to mention, you may have noticed on today's agenda that there was no legislative update. I'm sure you're all aware that the legislature has been at a bit of a standstill, so there wasn't a whole lot to report on in terms of any movement or progress on anything. I did want to note, though, that just about a half hour before we started this meeting, the Joint Committee on Ways and Means posted an agenda for a meeting tomorrow morning where they're holding a work session on over 30 bills. So I'm not quite sure what this indicates, that Ways and Means is going to hold a work session on 30 bills, although there's a number of things that could be happening. There are some legislative maneuvers that can be used to move bills forward without going through the full Senate. And there's also maybe some hope that things will get resolved in the next or the remaining 26 days of the session. But nothing to report yet. That's all.
Pretty frustrating being at a standstill up there. Well, even our standstill in the federal Congress. Okay. Are we done, everybody? It's time for me to adjourn the meeting. So I don't see any hands. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.